This is the Benchdogs Ultra Combi Max, a set square from Benchdogs. Is it a master of all trades, a master of none, or is it a quality product? I've no idea. Let's find out. So welcome back to the Woodgrafter, and today we're going to have a look at the Combi Max, the Ultra Set Square from Benchdogs. Now, in true transparency, Benchdogs have sent this over for review. I've not paid for it, and I'm under no obligation whatsoever to like this product or give it a positive review. I think as woodworkers, we're all very guilty of buying many tools that store away neatly into our workshops, and then we use a selection of those on a regular basis. I call those my go-to tools. And this is my grab wall. On the wall tends to be the tools I use the most, and on my shelf here are the tools I use the most. So they're always to hand and I always grab them. And there's three tools when it comes to measuring that I usually reach for. My Incra Guaranteed Square, my Starit Set Square, and my Precision Incra Rule. Now, the Benchdogs Combi Max has the promise of replacing all of these three grab tools, and that's quite a challenge because I love these tools and I've got to trust them over time. So today I want to look at this and put it through its paces. So today we'll start by looking at the range and look at the price point of that range. This is a new product. It comes to the market, I think it starts shipping from the 20th of November, and today is the 12th of November 2023, so we're not too far away from launch. And there's going to be a range coming down the line, both in the 90-degree version that we've got and the 45-degree version that we will see soon, I am sure. Once we've been through the range, I want to talk about the features, because this has a lot up its sleeve for a simple device, which is why it has the potential of replacing my go-to tools when I'm marking out, give me the precision that I need. I then want to check its accuracy, because if this thing's not square, then it fails test one. So what's the point of having it in the workshop? So I want to test its accuracy. I then want to put some of the unique functions through its paces and just give you an idea of what you can do with that. And once we've done it, we will have a quick review and see what we think. So with that said, let's crack on and look at the all-important range. So this is the 90-degree version, and this is called the Combi Max. And the 90-degree version is going to come in 4 sizes. This is a 320mm version, so called because the length of the ruler is 320mm. There's going to be a version that's going to come in at 200mm, which is that sort of length. And then a version that's going to come in at 160mm, which is that sort of length there. So you can start to see the 3 sizes of this size. There's then going to be a Combi Mini version that's going to come in at 100 with a much smaller body here as well. I'm really looking forward to looking at that smaller device when Ralph gets it to the marketplace. Now there's going to be a version of this that's going to have a 45-degree angle on one side, much more the traditional style, but still in this large body casement here. And that will come in, I think, at similar sizes, the 320, the 240, the 160, and hopefully the mini version as well. So that's the sort of kind of range that you're going to see coming out into the future. Now that's not confirmed as a full range, but I will update the comments underneath the video as things start to finalise, and I'm sure Ralph will comment as well just to give us an update of what he's actually thinking. Now the price point for this version here, which is the largest one that they do, comes in at £99, and that includes UK VAT. Now you might look at that and say, my God, I can get something from my local DIY store for £12.50. Well, you can, but they're not very good. Now this is going for quality, not quantity, and it's competing against the big boys. It's competing against the accuracy of the Starit Set Square. It's competing against the accuracy of the Incra Square. It's competing against the accuracy and functionality of the Incra rules. And those things aren't cheap. This Starit Square here would cost you £109.10. This Incra Square here would cost you £99.95, and the rule comes in at £35, and that's a total of £244.05. So something that's got the promise of replacing all 3 of these at a price point of £99 is pretty good. And even if I buy this one and one of the 45s give me this functionality, I'm still at a lower price point. So I think that's a really great price point if you're the sort of woodworker who wants precision in your work. Now, to be fair to Benchdogs, they're not claiming that they're replacing this type of device. They're just saying, hey, we're bringing this product to the market. It's my own opinion there that says I think I can replace my 3 go-to tools. And let's see why. Now, the first and obvious conversation is this is a combi square. It's got a milled aluminium body, not cast, which is important, a milled aluminium body. It's got a stainless steel rule that has 1mm increments built into it here, so you can use a 0.5mm pencil to give you precision parallel markings. It's also got these holes here in the middle, and these are a clearance 5mm hole, and they are set 32mm apart, which means this also helps if you're doing European cabinet style carpentry based on the 32mm system, and we'll look at that shortly. It's also got here these little indents, also at 32mm, which makes marking out for Euro style cabinetry quite quick and easy. Now, I use these increments an awful lot, and I've always used the increments on here. Now, the Benchdogs has given me these 1mm increments. Now, this gives me a lot more precision. It does give me the millimeter increments, but it also gives me 0.25mm, 0.5mm, and 0.75mm. And I just don't need that level of accuracy in the work, so I just tend to use 1mm that this one now does for me as well. And if you're not familiar with that, what you do here is you position it at the end, you find the increment that you want, and pull it down, and in that particular case, I've now got a parallel line 180mm from the edge, and that works at any of those holes. So I can now set my rule to 190mm, go to the end of my rule, and now I've got a parallel line 190mm. But I can now also say I want to come in 20mm from that line, which is there, use that increment, and now that's 170, and I can do as many of these that I want. So I get the same functionality here, and also because they've given me so much accuracy, and it's 0.25, 0.5 and 0.75, these holes are very, very narrow, and that tends to break the lead on a 0.5mm pencil an awful lot, and then they get blocked with a 0.5mm lead, so it does annoy me a little bit. Now, these holes here are a little bit wider, and when you look at a 0.5mm propelling pencil, you have this metal support here, then your lead comes out the end. Now, these holes are actually wide enough where they rest on the metal support, not the lead, so it's less prone to breaking my lead during use. And that's a very, very small minor thing, but by God, if you've used a 0.5mm lead with that sort of increment system, you'll know how often that breaks. So to have that support, so all the strain is on the metal collar, not the lead, is actually quite useful. So I do think for that sort of work, which is really useful when you're marking dados out or tendons or mortises, then I can see this being the go-to tool moving forward, and not the Incra one. So initial functionality there seems pretty good to me. Now, the thing that I love about my Incra guaranteed square is it's square. It's guaranteed to be square, and it's square because of the manufacturing process. And you can see all this body here is made out of a single piece of aluminium, and that's really, really nice. And it's the first device I've had that's had a shoulder here, which means it sits on the work incredibly well. If you look at the Starrett, it tips. It doesn't lie on the work. It sort of kind of tips. So you're putting pressure on that one. Where this one here just lies like this. Now, the manufacturing process of this is also very, very good. This is milled. This is milled from a solid block of aluminium. And the things that make these square is this shoulder just here inside. Now, if that shoulder there inside that slot is manufactured to be 90 degrees to the faces, then that's what gives this thing its accuracy. And so long as this is manufactured where these two edges are perfectly parallel with each other, and the shoulders of this slot in the middle are parallel to the faces, then the ruler piece references against the slot inside here, and this knurl just pulls it all against that reference face, and that gives you 90 degrees. Now, I know sometimes when you take these things apart, it's quite hard to get them back together, but this is easy. You just put that in there, push the thumb screw up, and you're back in ready to go. Now if I tighten the thumb screw down and if I push this deliberately out of a square, that thumb screw is going to pull it all back into square. Do you see that move? I'll do it again. Over exaggerating, you can see that's not square. As I tighten the thumb screw in, it catches on the rule, brings it down, references against that slot that's been milled inside there, and that in theory is now square, assuming that that slot is square to the face. Now the other thing it's got up its sleeve is this little slider here, which is a rest. So I can now come along and I can put my rest in place, and guess what? That now sits nice and flush as well. Now it's also giving me a longer reference edge than the Incra. You can see I've got a much longer reference edge here, but having said that, if I was to buy the smaller version of this, then it'd be the same reference face. So that's neither here nor there. But what it does mean is if this has got any inaccuracies in it whatsoever, then that's going to be amplified the longer that the straight edge is. So I'm going to put this on its maximum extension, like so, and we're going to do a test. Now the way that you test the squareness of a device is by drawing a line. So what I want to do is first of all show you what out of square looks like on this technique if you've not used it before. I'm just going to come in with a lolly stick and I'm going to rest that lolly stick up against this inside shoulder here, so I've got a consistent reference point like that, and then I'll put that into place. And I'm going to find a clean piece of board there and I'm going to draw a line. Like so. And then I'm going to flip the square over, put my inaccuracy back in, and bring up this edge of that square to that line we've just drawn, right at this edge, not up here, right at this edge here, like so, and then draw a line. Now what you can see is that those lines separate the further up we go, and that's showing me that there's an inaccuracy in the squareness of that device. And of course there is, because some idiot put a great big lolly stick in the middle of the job. So without the lolly stick is this square. Now even the smallest variation between the squareness of this face and that edge will be amplified on this technique, and it's a good way of checking whether your squares are square or not. So I'm going to come in, and just so you know I'm not cheating, I'll just put a squiggly line down all of these other lines, and we'll come in, get a place where I can reference from here, and we'll draw our first line like so. Tip it over, put my lead on that line we just made, bring up my square, and draw a line. And what you're looking for are those two lines to be pretty much on top of each other, and you can see that those lines are pretty much on top of each other, and that shows me that this is square between here and here. I want to do the same and just check the other face, so I'm going to go to the other end and just do something similar here. Draw my line, draw my line, and once again that's drawn the line on top of the other line. So this, in all the things that matter, is square. This is square to here, and this is square to here. And don't forget, we took this out a few seconds ago just as we were looking at some of the features in the manufacturing process. So that is square enough for woodworking, and therefore that's why it's got the potential of replacing my Incra square. The manufacturing of this type of device is slightly different. Whereas this is milled, this is a cast body, and you're very dependent on the quality of the casting. Now it is machined, at the end of the day to give you these flat reference surfaces. But normally when you get this type of device, there is still some casting issues inside the slot. Although it works in the same principle, there's still casting issues inside that slot. And when you first get this type of device, you want to check the calibration. And then you can take a needle file down inside the casting and you can do micro adjustments to make sure that that is square. If you just go and buy your super cheap device from your local big box store, you can actually fettle them to get them perfectly square. So don't dismiss those cheaper devices. Out of the box, surprisingly, the Starrett wasn't perfectly square and I had to do a little bit of fettling. I'm talking micro adjustments of fettling inside the casting there with a needle file to get this thing to be perfectly straight and accurate. So just be aware of that. Now the thing that this can't replace is this 45 degrees. So currently I'm still going to be reaching this for my 45-degree angle. And similarly, its baby brother also has the 45-degree angle, and I do use these an awful lot. But when the smaller devices come out on the 45, I can see myself replacing these Starretts as well. Now that doesn't mean that any of those are bad devices, and they are not. They've served me well for many, many years, and I love and trust these tools. But you can see if I was starting again, just picking up this one could actually be really, really useful for me. Now I want to come back to something that this does that none of these actually can. And that's this series of holes here, these 32mm holes. Now you may have heard of the phrase European cabinetry joinery or the 32mm system. And Festool, who you may know I like a little bit as a company with the quality of their products, really sort of standardised the 32mm system. They didn't invent it. The 32mm system has been in and around for a while. And the 32mm system is about giving you standardised measurements as you're making European style cabinetry, which is the frameless sort of stuff that you see around an awful lot. And just in this workshop alone, the 32mm system has been used an awful lot. The holes in a standard MFT top are all at multiples of 32mm centres. 96 from memory is the centre point between these holes, a multiple of 32. All the door hinges and all the shelves on this cabinet here and every single drawer runner down here is all positioned on the 32mm system. The utility room that I built next door to this workshop, all the doors and all the carpentry and all the cabinetries are all built to the 32mm system. And if you ever get into that style of joinery, you'll see standardised panels with a standardised row of 32mm holes that all take purpose-built hardware onto your cabinets. Now what Benchdogs are doing across their measurement products here, they're beginning to put these clearance 5mm holes on their rulers at 32mm centres. And that's true of whether you're looking at the Combi Square. It's also true if you're looking at their series of rulers. They all have these 32mm holes. And if you look at the T-squares that Benchdogs do, you'll also see a set of 32mm holes. So let me show you that in use, because this really is quite useful. Now this is a hinge plate off what's known as a Euro hinge. And if you've not used Euro hinges before, go and watch videos. They're so adjustable and it really allows you to line doors up. But the spacings on a 32mm Euro system are 32mm. The mounting holes on a European drawer runner are at multiples of 32mm. So I can come along with my system. I can mount it on a reference edge of a cabinet. That's assumed that that's a cabinet. And I can use these reference holes on my device to drill 32mm holes. Now what you're going to need to do that is a quality centering drill bit. This is the 5mm Festool one. Please do not use cheap versions of this because you're going to start to damage your rule. So you do want something that's definitely going to center around a 5mm hole. And what that gives you is this nice series of 32mm holes across your cabinet. So you can now come in with the hinge plate, these purpose-made 5mm Euro screws, and your hinges for your cabinets are mounted, as simple as that. But you can also come in with your Euro compatible drawer runner and use that same series of holes to make your drawer runner. And that's the beauty of the 32mm system. Everything lines up with 32mm centers and you can drill your holes. So to see that built into a device really is quite simple. Now you may say, yeah, but that's not very long, Andy, and that's not going to give me the full width of a cabinet. No, it's not. But if you drop it out and you get yourself some 5mm alignment pins and push those into those 5mm holes that you've just made, you can now go ahead and continue to extend that for as long as you want. Now I wouldn't be using this for a production run to build a cabinet. Obviously I would use my Festool LR32 system for that. But if you're making small modifications in an existing cabinet where you might just want to drop some more holes in, to have that built into your device I think is quite useful. And the 32mm system tends to work on two sizes of holes, a 5mm hole and a 4mm hole. I tend to use 5mm because it gives me a bit more strength in the mounting, but 4mm works as well. And in fairness to Benchdogs, they've actually designed this to work with a 4mm centering bit rather than the 5 that I used. If you've got a quality bit here, like this Festool one, you can use 5. I wouldn't use cheap 5mm centering devices with this because it's just going to damage these holes and damage your rule, where this one works very well. Now Benchdogs do also create some centering drill bits I noticed on their website. I've not got them, I've not seen them, not used them, but I'm assuming they're quality because they're Benchdogs. And they do a 4mm one and a 5mm one. This Festool one here, the 5mm one, would cost you £58 if you were to buy that one. £58. Quality, but £58. The Benchdogs ones are £20 each, so £20 for the 40, so £20 for the 4mm and £20 for the 5mm, correct, in November 2023. So you can actually buy both the 4 and the 5 for less than this, and I would really encourage you to look at that if you were interested in using the 32mm system with this type of hole device. Now the final thing I want to talk about is the accuracy of the rule and whether it's going to make a very good measuring device. Apart from using the gauge on these to set a distance, I don't really use these as measuring devices. My go-to tools are these precision rules here that are ECC Class 1 rules, which means they've got a tolerance of less than 0.01% variance across their length, which is pretty cool. Now Benchdogs are claiming a plus or minus 0.1mm variance across the length of this product, this 320mm product. And if you do the maths, 0.1mm as a percentage of 320 is 0.03% thereabouts. So that actually makes the gauge on this one an ECC Class 2. And ECC Class 1 is very precise, and I say I've got 3 of those rules there that you see me using an awful lot on my grab wall. But an ECC Class 2 type rule is more than adequate for what we do in woodworking. We're going to get more variance of that with the width of a pencil lead or parallax error or the movement of wood. So that actually is a very good standard for woodworking. But what I want to do is to check it for myself, again non-scientific. So it's going to be hard to see this, I'm afraid, so you may just have to trust me. I've got the Benchdogs rule here hard up against this face on my Incra square. I've got the precision rule, my reference ruler, hard up against this face on my Benchdogs square, and I've zeroed both ends out against this fence here. And when I come down here, that 310 line is bang on to the naked eye, lined up. So this is incredibly precise. Now I'm not surprised that's precise and that Ralph makes those claims. He uses a machine called an Axiom 2 CMM, And that's a machine that has got a 2 micron level of accuracy. To make that real for you, a human hair is 5 microns. That's 2/1000ths of a millimeter accuracy on that machine, and that's what he uses to measure the accuracy of his products. So not only has he invested heavily in the milling machines themselves, great accuracy in the milling machines, he then measures the accuracy of the produced products using that machine. And I'm not an expert at all in any way, shape or form, but I know he has that machine and it works incredibly well. And just simple workshop level calibration shows that's great. Everything in this workshop that I use to measure is all referenced against one of my steel rules, and I've checked all 3 of my rules here, and they all measure the same as well. So my Benchdogs Mark II fence, this now inside my workshop, the precision triangles that I have, all my measuring gear, the Incra, everything measures exactly the same inside my workshop, which means I can use the right tool for the job, knowing I've got repeatable accuracy across whatever it is that I'm doing. So that passes my accuracy test. I have had devices in the workshop that don't pass that, and I just don't use them for measuring. Now there is one thing I don't like about this, it's just worth mentioning. When I'm using this little shoulder clip here, and that lays incredibly flat against my work, which is awesome, it's obviously to do with the balance. There's a lot of weight here inside the aluminium block. Stainless steel rule obviously balances pretty well in that position. But as I start to bring this out, then what starts to happen, you get to this tipping point where the combined weight of the block and this part now no longer is stable. Now it's not a big thing, but it's worth knowing about. Balanced incredibly well at its full extension. As I bring it in here, it tends to reach the tipping point. That's the only negative I can find about the Benchdogs Tool Combi Max. Is it going to replace my 3 tools, my go-to tools? Well, time will tell, but I think initial impression says yes, there's a good chance it will. It feels nice in the hand, it's very, very tactile. What I didn't mention, sorry, is that these edges on the ruler are slightly rounded, so as you draw your line and slide it away, you don't smudge your line. Small details, as always. I highly recommend this one. It's a good price point when I compare it to the collective price point of my grab tools. It's going to go on my grab shelf, and time will tell whether I'm grabbing this or my traditional go-to, so watch out as I'm making other videos, and then you can say, oh look, he's not using it, oh look at that, yeah, he's grabbed it again, and time will tell. But initial indications say this is really, really cool. So it's available for pre-order now, November 23. It ships on the 20th of November from memory, £99 including VAT. I can highly recommend it so far. And if you want to buy it, use the code Woodgrafter at checkout for a 5% discount. Hope you found it useful. Stay safe in the workshop, and I'll see you next time on the Woodgrafter.